have some pretty strong opinions, and I tend to keep them mostly to myself. There are certain things that I realize that a society must deal with. It's not an option. You can't have people going around killing people without pretty good cause. People stealing stuff from other people is generally a bad idea, and so I don't really support either of those things. And there are some others that that's true for, but I think we have to be careful with the idea of people, quote, cramming down. That's what we're going to talk about on today's Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt. Today is Monday, the 14th of June of 2021. Glad to have you along today, whether it's on Rumble on the podcast or on YouTube. Thank you for coming aboard. Remember that Rumble is my favorite platform. Again, you're going to watch where you're going to watch. I get it. You're going to listen if you're going to listen. I get that too. I want to read from my notes real quick to kind of give you an idea where I'm going today. For a relatively long period in my life, I have had an interest in the goings-on in the Republic of Korea. Part of that is related to understanding their history. You see, two of my children are half Korean, and various of their family obviously at least partially Korean, if not pure Korean. One interesting thing I found, just before World War II, Koreans were, quote, under the control of, end of quote, Japan. The Japanese banned the speaking of Hangul, Korean spoken written language, and teaching it to children, and killed people at times for things like late running trains. I'm sure it seemed perfectly reasonable to the Japanese to do what they did. Does it seem like it to me, or doesn't seem like it to me? Maybe it does to you, but it doesn't to me. You may think banning many kinds of behavior, activity, or thought is reasonable. As for me, I can't even get behind stopping people from holding odious meetings of various kinds. It's true, certain behaviors should be illegal. Murder, as I've already said, being an example. That said, we should be very careful what we make so. That's just how that needs to be. You can like that or not, you can agree with me or not. It's up to you, but that's the reality. As you might have guessed, I am done with my notes, so I'm just going to kind of hold forth on this for a little bit. So again, my former father-in-law, who I guess has passed on, last I heard, that was what I had heard. Whether that was correct then or now, I would expect so, but I really don't know. His wife maybe is gone too, but my former father-in-law, apparently, this is what I got from other people talking about it, served on a Japanese ship. He was Korean, served on a Japanese ship more or less at gunpoint. And I've heard stories about him finding himself in water with oil burning all around him when that ship was sunk. That's the story that I've heard. The point is that the Japanese, quote, crammed down on the Koreans this idea that you're going to serve us in ways that we consider appropriate, proper, and acceptable. Well, obviously that's not something that I consider to be particularly reasonable. You'll forgive me for saying so, but that's the case. So you can imagine that for things of that severity, it would be pretty much normal for me to not be interested in people cramming down. But you have to know that that's a general thing. One of the things to me about the United States is it was built on the idea of liberty. And people say, well, that's the liberty to do right. And my answer to that is no, that's the liberty to do wrong, people. I'm not saying that you should spend your time doing wrong, either according to Christianity or according to the American way of doing business. You should spend your way doing right, most certainly. But you need to understand that the only way you can make it possible to tell the difference between right and wrong is to have people do wrong. Okay? And more importantly, there are times when people will tell you that what you're doing is wrong and the thing that you're doing will be right. This goes in some measure to the subject I had recently where I talked about the idea behind doing what integrity said you should do as opposed to doing what's popular or even what looks like good things to other people. I forget the term I used, but you get the idea. The point is this. In the end, it's your integrity that matters. And people are going to tell you that you're wrong. You can be sure that it wasn't just the British telling George Washington or Benjamin Franklin they were wrong. You can be sure that many Americans, many people in the United States did likewise. You can be sure that there were people who agreed with certain things that were enshrined in the Constitution and certain people who vehemently opposed things that found their way into the Constitution. I promise you that it was reasonable for the things that did find their way there to do so. I promise you that's the case. So when people say it should be your right to do right and that that's what those things are about, my answer is rubbish. You should be allowed, you should be able to do wrong. Now that doesn't mean you won't suffer the consequences of doing wrong. If you kill somebody and you don't have a reason to do so, I think probably you'll end up in jail or in some other punitive mechanism designed to deal with that, right? I'm not saying we can't deal with people in punitive fashions for having done wrong in various ways. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is this idea that your freedom to exercise your choices should only be allowed for good choices, whether for Christians or for Americans, is a bad idea. It's a bad one. No, we can't tell people you can't do that. There are any number of times that people would have looked at the way we do surgery in the modern day in the United States and thought, that's barbaric. Ask how many people have had their lives saved by doctors doing what would have been considered barbaric practices by others in time past. Ask how many. The number is countless, innumerable, right? People have been saved by doctors doing things that people in the past would have told them were wrong. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that there aren't certain things that you can pretty easily, readily, or directly say, well, that's wrong. I'm not trying to do that. No, you can do that. That's reasonable. That's fair, right? We totally expect that that's the case. But what I am saying to you is, just because you look at something and assume that it's wrong doesn't mean that it is. And so bringing this back to the initial subject, the point is, what that means is, unless you have very good reason for writing laws and making edicts and so forth that you do, the idea of cramming those things down on others from on high may create just as many problems as they solve. Maybe they'll create more. I can't answer that for sure. But what I can tell you is that if you cram down things from on high, or even, relatively high, even say, for example, from a state level here in the United States, the possibility is that you're going to cause issues that you did not intend to cause. That law of unintended consequences is going to come to bite you. What's the law of unintended consequences? It's when you got mad and kicked the stone and the stone broke at the base and fell on you. That's an unintended consequence. Obviously, that's a little bit ridiculous, right, for most situations. But the point is, if you cram things down on people, the more things you cram down on people, the more chance there is that what you're going to see is the law of unintended consequences being put in, being following from what happens. I had to think of the proper way to put that. Sorry for just a second of thinking things through. So this is what I'm trying to get at, okay? And I cite the example of the Koreans under the Japanese just prior to World War II. You can be sure that a lot of what the Japanese did was problematic. You can be sure that the untold ill effect on the Koreans was not even completely known at the time. The same thing applies to things like COVID-19 rules. If you're going to do them, at least do them locally. And frankly, I'd prefer you just didn't do them at all. All right, I need to go ahead and wrap this up. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt. Today is Monday, the 14th of June of 2021. That means tomorrow will be Tuesday, the 15th of June of 2021. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube. Remember, Rumble is my preferred platform. Remember, you can give me a positive Rumble or a negative one on Rumble if you choose to do so, and a like or a dislike. That's a thumbs up or a thumbs down on YouTube. And remember also that you can comment, and I'd love to hear your comments on anything that I say, because anything that straightens me out helps me to put out videos that I think are going to be more useful to more people. Hope you're doing well today on this beginning of the work week. I'm beginning to warm up pretty good. I turn off my air conditioner and my fan while I do my video, so there's less undue noise. So I'm a little bit warm at this moment, but that's okay. I'll get under air conditioning in a minute, and I won't even know that that's the case, or that's been the case. Again, hope that you're doing well, and hopefully we'll see you on tomorrow's Daily Summation. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video is recorded on Monday, June 14th of 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.